We're going to shift focus now to the worst piece of news that I've received within the last couple of days. That is, of course, the news of my guy, Kevin Durant, going down with an MCL sprain. Of course, thank Christ that this is not as severe as last year. So on Sunday, I think it was, the Nets were taking on the Miami Heat, and there was a play involving Jimmy Butler and Kevin Durant, wherein Butler dove at Kevin Durant trying to get a swipe, hit his knee. No, hold on. Let's read the article. Brooklyn Nets star Kevin Durant is expected to be sidelined for approximately a month, sources told Woj on Monday. The Nets announced that Durant was diagnosed with an isolated MCL sprain of his right knee and will be evaluated in 2 weeks. Durant missed 6 weeks with the left MCL sprain beginning in January last season, but there's confidence that this is less severe. This is a less severe injury that won't sideline the MVP candidate more than 4 weeks. Durant sustained the injury in the third quarter of the Nets' 102-101 victory over the Miami Heat on Sunday. The injury occurred with 105 left in the third, his Heat swingman Jimmy Butler went to the rim and got a shot blocked by Ben Simmons. Butler fell back into Durant's knee, and Durant stayed on the ground for a few moments but remained in the game. Durant kept rubbing at the knee up and down the floor and was taken out when the Nets called a timeout about 30 seconds later. He walked straight to the locker room to get checked out and did not return. This isn't the first time he has dealt with the knee issue. He injured the MCL in his left knee during a January 15th win in 2022 over the New Orleans Pelicans and had to miss more than a month and a half while rehabbing. That was, of course, a fucking league-altering move because had it not been for, I believe it was Herb Jones, Herb Jones pushed Bruce Brown into Kevin Durant. Obviously not maliciously or anything, but he extended that arm. Bruce Brown fell back into Kevin Durant, and Brown landed on his knee, sprained it, and that effectively ruined the Nets' campaign on top of everything else that had gone on. The Nets, who were 27-15 at the time and still playing with Kyrie Irving on a part-time basis because of the NYC vaccine mandate, were 5-11 in Durant's absence. Durant also missed over a month in 2017. That about clears up the article. Now, this is not all doom and gloom. I haven't really been on Twitter recently, so I don't know what the general consensus is among Nets fans, but I did have a friend reach out to me the day that on Monday when KD got the MRI, and he said, bro, the season is absolutely cooked.
Bruh.
And I thought that, he sprained something in his knee. I thought it was an ACL tear, a meniscus tear, something like that. And learning that it was an isolated sprain, I don't know what the that means, but probably something less severe. I kind of was relieved. I saw him to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. I'm like, he's not coming back in 2 weeks. Definitely not. He's going to be out for about a month, I reckon. And that seems to be the consensus among the Nets staff. Of course, something that contributed to Brooklyn keeping him out last year was I think that they kind of knew last season was a wash between everything going on with Ben Simmons, between all of the going on with Kyrie. I feel like they knew that it was not their season that year. They rested Kevin Durant for a little longer than they had to just to be a little extra cautious, which, you know, so goes it in the NBA, unfortunately. But I think that this is, it sucks, obviously, that Kevin Durant is not going to be with the Nets for however long. It's definitely going to be a difficult stretch for them. I think it should lead into the All-Star break. He should, if the timeline adds up, it is January 9th, January 10th at this time of recording. January 10th at this time of recording. A month puts us at about the weekend leading up to Valentine's Day, which is generally when the NBA All-Star break is. So he'll get like an extra free week of rest as well. So we should be all good. Now, why I'm not as apprehensive about this injury is for one reason and one reason only. This team is fundamentally different to how it was last season. A lot of which being the result of Jacques Vaughn. This team is an elite defensive unit, which means that this team can rely on their defense when their offense is not humming along. We've seen it multiple times this year. They played a grind fest against Miami, holding Miami to 101 points. I understand Miami's not the most dynamic offense, but it's very rare to see games like that in today's NBA because everyone is so talented. Long gone are the days of elite defensive teams holding their opponents to fewer than 100 points. It's just not the case. But Nick Claxton looks like a defensive player of the year guy. He looks like he could be first team all defense. Ben Simmons is still a good defender. You have Royce O'Neal. You've got a cohesive unit on that end who wants to compete defensively. They're giving effort defensively. They have bought in to whatever Jacques Vaughn has cooked up. And please, for the love of God, continue to let this man cook. They've bought into it. So even when KD has not been playing well or shooting well, even when Kyrie has not been shooting well, everything has been relatively fine over these last 15 games, of which Brooklyn is 14-1. They have a defensive rating of 111.7, which is the sixth best total in the league. We're going to do this same thing with points allowed per game. So 15 game stretch, of which Brooklyn is 14-1. Opponents are averaging 111.5 points. Now this is the biggest like stretch from 20, 30 years ago. The sixth best team and the sixth best defensive team in 2000 is not holding their opponents to 112 points a night. Miami is the best team in this is the best defense over this stretch at 107 points allowed per game. So Brooklyn can lean on their defense. It is going to be gritty. It's going to be difficult for them. Of course, they still have Kyrie Irving, fortunately, and they still have other guys who can contribute offensively. Thank God, because there is no part of me that wants to watch this team play these games without Kevin Durant. Because one, Kevin Durant is incredibly fun to watch, and he was playing like an MVP before this happened. But a lot of the times, the offense is just like kind of boring and is saved by the flair and the theatrics that Kyrie and KD bring to the table. Like, we're just going to take a look at this. We're just going to take a look at the scoring leaders for this team over the last 14 games. KD's at about 29. Kyrie's at 28. There is a severe drop-off to Nick Claxton at 12, who, of course, gets a majority of those points spoon-fed to him from KD and Kyrie. Next is TJ Warren, who's giving you 10 points a night. He's your fourth leading scorer. Then it's Patty Mills, Seth Curry, Royce O'Neal. Of course, these three guys are all, again, getting their points off of passes from Kyrie, Ben Simmons. So I don't really think like any of their numbers are going to change. I am very excited, however, to see how TJ Warren steps up in this role, because he's giving Brooklyn 10 points in 20 minutes. If we adjust this to per 36, which is a seriously like similar amount of minutes that TJ Warren might be seeing, he's up to 18. That is good enough to help keep this offense afloat while Kevin Durant is absent. Of course, you're not going to see them dumping on teams like how they used to. You're not going to be able to see them come back from big deficits late in the game, or if they're down 15 at halftime, it's going to be significantly harder for them to come back. But this is not a reason to panic. This is something that they can withstand. This is something that tons of other teams have withstood before. I mean, you look at the Warriors. The Warriors are, hold on, let's go. I want to see the Warriors record over the last 10 games, because they have not been with Steph Curry, and they have seemingly figured it out. Over the last 10 games, Golden State is 6-4 without Steph Curry, which, that is a huge piece to lose. And they don't have somebody like Kyrie. Like, Jordan Poole is great, and Clay is great, and Draymond is great, but they are not Kai, they are not Steph. But what they do have is a unit on which they can rely on their defense, and they are also, again, they're exceptionally coached. They've bought in to Steve Kerr. So I don't feel that this is all doom and gloom. I do not feel that Brooklyn is going to go on a skid like how they've gone on last year when KD went out. Another thing that I'm very interested to see is the development of Ben Simmons in this circumstance. And this is a fantastic circumstance for Ben Simmons to be in, because if we remember, many moons ago, it seems like, back before, the world changed, back before the COVID pandemic, back before Ben Simmons was the laughingstock of the NBA, this was a kid who was tasked with leading the Philadelphia 76ers in Joel Embiid's absence. And he did that pretty well, giving them 18 points a night, 20 points a night, allowing the offense to seem like it's its old self, keeping everything from crashing and burning. And that was with him being the number one on those teams. Well, arguably the number one on those teams. And, Philly managed to get through it. And losing Joel Embiid is a colossal loss. Now, Ben Simmons is not going to be able to rely on Kevin Durant and Kyrie to bail him out. And I do still feel that there is some reluctance on his part to be more assertive. I do feel that, he has improved over the year, and I don't think it's a psychological thing. I think it's a hierarchical thing because he knows as a playmaker and as a very intelligent basketball player that the team is at its best when KD and Kyrie are allowed to cook. And Ben does not want to take shots from them. He also doesn't want to take shots from Seth Curry. He doesn't want to take shots from Watanabe. He doesn't want to take shots from the myriad of elite three-point shooters on the line or spacing the floor. He doesn't want to muck up what's working. But now is the chance for him to remind us of the type of player that he really is, an aggressive force going downhill when he chooses to be. And once this happens, it will be a lot easier for him to tone back on his aggression than it will be to ramp it up. But if this is a good stretch for him where he is more aggressive and he begins to build confidence, he will be able to turn that aggression on. And that will also allow KD and Kyrie to rest a little bit more because these guys are playing a decent amount of minutes. Kyrie is at 36 over these last 15 games. KD's at 34 over these last 15 games. And these are guys who you want to be fresh for the postseason because they are older. So I do think that best case scenario, we're going to go and take a look at this upcoming schedule for Brooklyn until the All-Star break. So again, the All-Star break this year is February 15th is the last game Brooklyn plays before the All-Star game. So maybe I would imagine that KD will be back on February 24th against Chicago. If I had to guess, that will give him like 6 weeks off, but it will be an extra week it'll be a week that he already had off. And I don't really think there's any reason to bring him back the game before the All-Star game because it's one game. It's whatever. So they play Boston on Thursday, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Phoenix, Utah, Golden State, Philly, Detroit, New York, the Lakers, Boston again, the Wizards, the Clippers, the Suns, the Bulls again, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Heat again, Chicago, and Atlanta. If I'm being charitable, I think they'll beat Oklahoma City. I think they'll beat San Antonio. I think they'll beat Phoenix as well because Phoenix is kind of going through it. I think they'll beat Detroit. I think they'll beat the Knicks at least once. I think they'll beat the Lakers. I think they'll beat the Wizards. I do think that since they are playing 2 games against Phoenix, I think they will lose one of those 2 games against Phoenix, but whatever. I think they'll beat the Bulls. I think they'll beat the Bulls once. I don't think they beat Miami again, and I think they beat Atlanta. So we're at 3, 6. I forgot how to count. We're at 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nine wins against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 losses. So you're looking at a near 500 record. I think this is the most likely scenario is a near 500 record with Kevin Durant out. And that will, of course, put them at, let's see, 27 plus 9 is 30, 36. And then they will be 36 and 24, which 12 games above 500 it's pretty good, especially in this Eastern Conference. Now, if we want to get a little goofy, you can say that, they don't beat Chicago that one time. They, blow a bunch of these games against opponents that are lower quality because Brooklyn is known to do that every so often. But I don't think it would be unimaginable to see them go 9 and 10 or 9 and 11 or maybe even 10 and 10. Who's to say they don't steal a game against Philly or they don't steal a game against Golden State? It's entirely likely that that happens. But again, I'm just trying to remain as optimistic as possible. And my optimism is, again, like almost solely rooted in the fact that Jacques Vaughn is the head coach of this team. and there is a cohesive game plan that all of the guys have bought into, and which is fantastic, which is absolutely tremendous. But key things to look out for during this stretch are, of course, TJ Warren's increased usage in the offense. Hopefully, we see the return of Bubble TJ. I would love to see Bubble TJ Warren have like a 45-point outburst against Philly or against Boston or against Miami. I think that would be fucking incredible. And then, of course, Ben Simmons's development as well. And still, I think the defense is going to remain elite.